I'm Kaylin. I worked 2 jobs, skipped vacations, gave up my dream of owning a home, all to ensure my sister Valora could attend college debt-free. Yet at a family dinner, surrounded by people I once thought loved me, she laughed and called me a loser. My mom just said, "Don't ruin the mood." No one defended me. No one even blinked. That night, something inside me snapped. Before I dive into what happened next, tell me, have you ever sacrificed everything for family only to be treated like you never mattered? Drop a comment below. I read every word. Because what came after, even I didn't see it coming. It didn't start with a scream or a fight. It began with a sentence, soft, almost forgettable. But I never forgot it. We were at my parents' house in Fresno, 600p. On a Sunday, the light outside carried that amber glow unique to early fall. My mum, Vera, set down a tray of cornbread, while my dad, Marin, poured sweet tea into glasses like it was a sacred ritual. Valora, my sister 6 years younger, sat cross-legged on the couch, scrolling her phone as if dinner was an inconvenience to her busy life. I'd driven straight from the garage, grease still under my nails. Tired, hungry. I was mentally calculating how to stretch my paycheck to cover another tire rotation I wasn't charging for. I thought this dinner would be a reset, a simple gathering. It wasn't. I just got the official acceptance from UC San Diego. Valora announced mid-bite as casually as commenting on the weather. Mom gasped like it was breaking news. "Oh, sweetheart, we're so proud of you." I smiled automatically. Valora didn't even glance at me. "You know, college is expensive," she added, eyes still on her screen. "But it's worth it. Totally worth it." Mom nodded slowly, dramatically, as if pondering world hunger. Then she turned to me and said, "Now, Kaylin, we don't expect you to pay for it, but you've always been the responsible one." She smiled like that was supposed to feel like a compliment. No one else said a word. They just kept eating as if that sentence hadn't tilted the ground beneath me. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That's how things work in my family. They never ask outright. They just drop things at my feet and walk away. Later that night, after the dishes were cleared, I drove back to my small rental. I sat in front of my budget spreadsheet. I'd been saving for a house. Nothing grand, just a 2-bedroom with a patch of grass. Something mine, something stable. The number $18,400 glowed in bold at the bottom corner of my screen. If I kept saving, I'd hit my goal by spring. But then Dad's voice echoed in my head. College debt breaks people. I've seen it ruin futures. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening my banking app. 2 days later, I transferred $8,000 for Valora's initial fees. Enrollment deposit, textbook, pre-orders, housing deposit. I didn't tell her where the money came from. I didn't tell anyone. When she texted "Thanks, sis" with a string of heart emojis, I just replied, "No problem." That night I lay in bed listening to the radiator rattle, telling myself, it's just money. She's family. I'll catch up. I've always caught up. But something fell off. The next morning during my break at the garage, I opened TikTok and saw Valora's latest post. A first day of college outfit, reveal complete with new heels and a designer tote bag. In the background, someone shouted, "Queen." I stared at the screen as the engine I was working on hissed. That twisting feeling in my stomach returned silent and sharp. 2 weeks later, I came home from a late shift and found a box on my porch. Mom's handwriting scrolled on top Valora's mail. "Thought you could drop it off." I sighed, dragged it inside, and sorted through glossy campus flyers, credit card offers, and unopened catalogs. Then I saw an envelope with my name on it, Calin cosigner, printed under my address. I froze. Cosigner? I slid it open with a key and pulled out the letter. Terms, repayment schedules, interest rates. My heart pounded. I hadn't signed anything. Or had I? I sank to the floor, papers scattered around me. I hadn't just helped her. I'd signed something big, and in that moment I realized I hadn't just helped her. I'd signed away everything. I didn't sleep much that night. I rechecked the loan papers, scrolled through every email, every text thread. There it was, buried in a line I hadn't thought twice about: acknowledgement of guarantor. Just a rushed e-signature at the DMV when Valora said her housing paperwork needed a backup signer just in case. She hadn't mentioned student loans. She hadn't mentioned I'd be on the hook. Months passed and I didn't say a word. I kept working, doubled my shifts at the garage, skipped meals to stretch gas money. My savings plan forgotten. The house I dreamed of replaced by a payment schedule that would outlive my 30s. Then came the dinner. Mum left a voicemail. We're having a little get-together this Friday. Valora's home. You should come. I almost didn't go. I stared at the message 3 times that day. The 3rd time I deleted it, but not before hearing she misses you. Did answer. System she. Friday arrived faster than I'd hoped. I left work at 6, wiped my hands as best I could, and changed into a clean sweatshirt in the garage restroom. I kept my work boots on. There wasn't time to swing by home. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, I could already hear music through the windows. Their house was glowing. Candles lined the entryway. The table dressed like we were expecting a senator, not a college sophomore on spring break. I stepped inside my boots, squeaking on the freshly mopped tile. Mom looked up from arranging tulips and smiled as if I'd shown up uninvited. Well, you made it, she said. Go freshen up. Dinner's almost ready. Valora emerged from the kitchen in a pale silk jumpsuit, hair curled, makeup flawless. She looked like she belonged on a talk show. She smiled at me, more teeth than warmth. Did you come straight from the pit? She asked, sniffing the air. I let it slide. That was the only way to survive these nights. Dinner was roast chicken lemon, asparagus, and truffle mashed potatoes. I sat between Dad and the coat rack. Valora was seated center stage, her wine glass, full arms, flailing as she talked about lectures, professors, and some incubator trip to Milan. No one asked how I was. No one made eye contact unless I refilled the gravy. Dad handed her a slim gift box halfway through dessert. We know you've been networking like crazy, sweetie. Thought this might help with your interviews? Inside was a sleek silver tablet, one I knew I'd partially paid for when my checking account hit overdraft last week. Valora beamed. Oh my God, thank you. She didn't thank me. She never did. I bit into a dry piece of pound cake and tried to tune it out. Tried not to care until the conversation shifted. So Valora said, twirling her fork, I got nominated for a semester abroad. Paris. Mom cooed, oh how lovely. Of course it's not cheap. Valora continued with a smirk. Hope you're ready to pick up a 3rd job, sis. She said it like a joke, light and playful, but every syllable hit like a slap. There was a pause, one of those tight artificial silences filled with nervous laughter. I smiled politely, even as something twisted deep in my chest. Maybe I said, forcing my voice steady, you could pick up a job this time. Valora raised an eyebrow. Me? A part-time job. That's rich, coming from someone who's been working at the same garage since high school. Laughter brief and uneasy. Mom jumped in, shaking her head. Let's not ruin dinner. Dad cleared his throat and passed the butter like we hadn't just watched someone throw grease on a fire. I finished my cake in silence, then stood pretending I needed the bathroom. I walked down the hall, heart-pounding, ears hot. I didn't cry. Not then. In the bathroom, I ran cold water over my hands and stared at my reflection. I looked tired. My eyes had gone from sharp to hollow these past months. I reached for my wallet, needing a mint to settle my stomach. But when I opened it, I saw a photo tucked behind my insurance card. Me and Valora as kids, a cheap strip mall snapshot. Both of us grinning, missing teeth, cheeks painted with butterflies from a fair, I stared at it, then folded it in half and slipped it into the drawer beneath the sink. I didn't tear it, didn't curse her name. I just let it go. It was a small act, but it felt like the first breath I'd taken in weeks. On the drive home, I kept the radio off. The streets of Fresno were quiet, the kind of quiet only working-class towns get after 10 p. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Valora's voice echoed. That's rich, coming from someone who's been working at the same garage since high school. She'd said it like a punchline, like I was a side character in her show. For the first time, I let the thought in, maybe I really was the loser in their story. That thought reverberated as I tossed my work boots into the corner and sank onto the couch. The springs squeaked. I didn't care. I was too tired to change, too wired to sleep. At 2:13 a.m., the time burned into my memory. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I almost ignored it, assuming it was a weather alert or junk ad. But it was from my credit monitoring service. New inquiry under your name. I sat up, clicked the link, and sleep vanished. A new lease had been opened in my name. Student housing, a different building from where Valora was staying. Confused, I scrolled through the file. There it was in bold, Callan Dwyer, financial guarantor. My hands started to sweat. I hadn't signed anything. I called the contact number listed. A woman answered, groggy but polite. University Suites leasing office. This is Hannah. I tried to keep my voice calm. I just got a notice about a lease under my name. It says I'm the co-signer for Unit 3B. I didn't apply for anything. After verification, she said plainly, you're listed as the responsible party. Your sister Valora said you agreed to co-sign and handle the deposit. I couldn't respond for a full beat. My jaw clenched so hard my molars ached. I never signed anything I said finally. She hesitated. It was done electronically. Maybe. She said you were her financial guardian. I managed a strained thanks and hung up. I opened my laptop, read the document 3 times every term and clause. Then I emailed it to my work inbox, subject line, evidence. I didn't text Valora. I didn't call Mom. I didn't rage on social media. I sat in silence with a cup of black coffee and a dull ache behind my eyes, the kind that sits between anger and realization. I'd crossed a line without knowing it and couldn't walk back. That weekend, I drove south to San Diego. Valora had left a box of things at home. Books, makeup bags, she claimed were essential. I figured I'd deliver it, cross one thing off my mental list. She was waiting in the lobby, air-kissing my cheek like she was hosting a charity gala. Her hair was perfectly curled, designer sneakers. Gold phone case. You made it, she said as if I were an Uber driver. The girls upstairs are dying to meet you. I didn't say much, just followed her up 2 flights into a living room that looked more like an Instagram set than a dorm. 4 girls sat around sipping pink drinks, barely glancing up. This is Kaylin, Valora said with a shrug. She helps me out sometimes. One girl raised an eyebrow. Oh, like your assistant or something. I didn't answer. Didn't correct them. I placed the box in the corner, nodded once and turned around. Valora called after me. Hey, you don't want to hang a bit. I didn't look back. On the drive north, I kept my windows cracked, just enough to let the wind slice in. It kept me awake, kept the heat in my chest from boiling over. I thought about those girls, how they didn't know me and never would. Because Valora didn't want them to. She'd erased me not loudly or cruelly, but gently, casually, like a blurry edit in a photo, cropping out what didn't fit her story. And I'd let her. Back home, I didn't kick off my shoes or grab dinner. I went straight to my desk, opened a new folder on my laptop, named it For Later. I dragged in the lease, PDF email trails, screenshots of bank transfers, Venmo payments, gift receipts, old texts where she'd said, "Can you spot me till next week? I'll pay you back after finals." I didn't know what I was building, but I knew I needed it. Because someday someone would ask why I stopped, why I said no, and I wanted to be ready. It was a Wednesday oil change, special day at the garage, meaning chaos. Long lines and customers hoovering for a $20 coupon. I'd just finished logging a customer's invoice when I sat in the break room and opened Facebook to scroll mindlessly during lunch. That's when I saw it. A shared post from Lydia, my parents' old friend. Caption: so proud of this girl for staying strong. Let's help Valora stay in school after unexpected hardship. I blinked, clicked, and stared. Valora's GoFundMe page, Keep Valora in School. I read her words slowly as if my brain couldn't process them. After our parents lost their retirement fund, I've been scraping by. My older sister tries, but she can't always help. I'm doing this alone. Below was a photo of her on the dorm floor, bundled in a sweater, clutching a textbook like it was all she had left. The lighting was too perfect. The bed was staged, the angle deliberate. Another shot, Valora by a window, head tilted, a tear tracking her cheek. I didn't know when she'd learn to cry on cue, but she was good at it. My hands trembled. Hanal's $200 every month. Groceries, extra books. Clothes, Wi-Fi bills. I paid quietly, steadily while she was online, collecting sympathy money from strangers, neighbours from Lydia and her quilting circle. She called me someone who tries. I closed the app, walked outside, and sat on the curb by the dumpster. I didn't cry. I printed the GoFundMe page, took screenshots of every comment, every donation, $10 from Aunt Merrill, $30 from my high school lab partner, $50 from someone I didn't recognize. I forwarded it all to my personal email, added it to the For Later folder. Before leaving the garage, I dug through my desk drawer and pulled out a dog-eared business card. Dan Navarro Legal Aid. He'd come in months ago when his Civic's alternator blew out. I'd helped him and he owed me a favor. I called, it's time to meet. 3 days later, I came home from work and saw a notification on my phone. Valora Lux posted a new video. I clicked without thinking. Caption: birthday surprise for the best man I've ever known. Grateful. The video opened with soft music, candles, and her boyfriend's voice. No way, are you serious? He opened a velvet box. Inside was a sapphire pendant. I knew that necklace. I'd bought it for Valora the night she graduated. I'd worked double shifts for 2 weeks, skipped meals, walked to work to save gas just to afford something special. She'd cried when I gave it to her, said no one believed in her like I did. Now it was his. He deserves the world, the caption read. I didn't flinch, didn't curse, didn't throw the phone. I saved the video, filed it, and moved on. That night, as pasta boiled half-forgotten on the stove, I sat at my desk. One by one, I pulled up my HR records at the garage and removed Valora as my emergency contact. Then I opened a blank document. Subject: financial independence notice. I wrote it all out. I was no longer financially supporting Valora. Any further charges in my name would face legal recourse. I hoped they'd understand this wasn't punishment, but protection. I didn't send it. I saved it in drafts. I leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, heart steady for once. Let them call me cold. I'd rather be cold than invisible. On Saturday morning, I pulled into their driveway just after 10. The folder on the passenger seat felt heavier than it should have. Paper and ink, yes, but more than that, every page was a weight I'd carried in silence. My hands didn't shake when I rang the doorbell. That surprised me. Dad answered, "Kaylin didn't expect you this early." I said I figured we should talk while there's still light. He didn't ask what about. In the living room, Mom was on her second cup of tea. Valora thankfully wasn't there. I sat across from them, pulled the folder from my tote, and laid the pages on the coffee table. Statements, screenshots, the necklace video. Mom glanced at it. "You're printing TikToks now." I said, "I'm showing you how deep this goes." She crossed her arms, looking tired more than alarmed. Why bring this here? Because I've been funding her life while she makes a mockery of mine. And you both pretend not to see it. Dad leaned forward, scanning a document. This lease, it says you co-signed. I didn't, and the credit freeze because of that lease. Mom looked at me like I was wasting her Saturday. Kaylin, that's between you and your sister. Don't drag us into your jealousy. I blinked. Jealousy. She's building a future. You've always stayed local. You chose that. I replied I chose it so she could go. I took a second job so she could stay. Dad raised a hand. No one forced you. I didn't say anyone did. But don't pretend my sacrifices were nothing. Mum sighed. Kaylin, we appreciated your help, but don't compare yourself to Valora. You've always been different. That was it. No, we're sorry. No, we didn't know. Just you're different. A cold stillness slid into my chest, the kind that doesn't beg for validation anymore. I stood, gathered my folder, and left without another word. Outside, the sun was too bright. I walked 2 blocks before realizing I'd left my car. Halfway back, someone called my name. Colleen. I turned. It took a second to place him. Jonah Mendez, high school speech team yearbook editor. He'd once called me the smartest girl in our class. He looked good, broad shoulders, dad, haircut, wedding ring. Didn't think I'd run into you here, he said. Still in town? Yeah, I nodded. Still at Jerry's garage. I hesitated. Between jobs, he nodded politely. I always thought you'd run your own shop. You used to talk about that. Still dreaming of it. I smiled thinly. Something like that. He mentioned his kids, his wife, their new house near Clovis. I wished him well, though I didn't mean it. Back home, I stared at my reflection in the mirror for a long minute. Still here, still working, still helping. That night, I wrote in my journal I wasn't the loser. I just believed the wrong story. I listed everything I'd done for Valora. Every transfer, grocery trip, rent payment. 3 pages typed. At the bottom, I wrote final tally, final straw. The next morning, I opened my email and attached the letter I'd drafted to my parents. It wasn't dramatic, just a few sentences. This isn't war, but it is closure. I won't be funding or facilitating anything for Valora going forward. I wish you both health and clarity. I didn't sign it with love, just my name. I turned off my phone and drove to the legal aid office. The receptionist recognized me. Here to see Darren? Yes, I said, and I'm ready to talk options. I thought that was the end until she came knocking, crying, begging, lying. It was almost 9 p. Mate, I'd just gotten out of the shower when I heard the knock. Not frantic, but persistent, the kind that waits you out. Through the peephole, I saw Valora mascara, streaked like paint on wet canvas arms, crossed tight like they were holding her together. I opened the door and said nothing. You can't just cut me off, she blurted, voice cracking. You don't understand what I'm dealing with. I stood in the doorway, hand on the knob, not inviting her in. Please, she continued, they're threatening to evict me. I can't pay everything. I've been juggling. You mean collecting? Her breath hitched. I didn't lie. Not really. I just stretched the truth. You were helping. What's the harm in saying you weren't? I didn't respond. She sniffled. Mom and Dad said you'd cave. You always do. That sentence slid down my spine like ice. The years of exhaustion scraping by while they smiled wide at her settled into something dense, permanent. I didn't reply. I just closed the door. 2 days passed. I went to work, changed oil-folded laundry while reruns played. I didn't talk to anyone about what happened. Then, on Wednesday evening, my cousin Marion texted, "You need to see this. It's gross." Attached was a screen recording from Valora's Instagram, live a girls' night at her dorm. Someone reposted it before she could delete it. In the clip, Valora lounged on a bed, sipping through a pink straw. Her friend asked, "How do you even afford all this stuff?" Valora grinned easy. My sister's got this martyr complex. Just say family, and she opens her wallet. The room erupted in laughter. She thinks she's the smart one. Bless her heart. That last line stung differently, like stepping on a hidden splinter. I didn't cry. Didn't throw my phone. I walked to the closet, pulled out my 4-later folder, and added a sticky note. Tonight I stopped being her story. The next morning I booked a private room at a family-owned Italian restaurant downtown. I sent invites to Mum, Dad, and 2 aunts who always said you girls need to stick together. I titled the event Family Update. They came, of course. Vera wore pearls. Marston adjusted his cuffs like it was a wedding rehearsal. Valora showed up in designer flats. I recognized because I'd paid for them. When everyone had settled and ordered drinks, I reached into my purse and pulled out a small Bluetooth speaker. Without introduction, I pressed play. Valora's voice filled the room. Just say family. And she opens her wallet. Laughter. She thinks she's a smart one. Bless her heart. Silence. Valora's face drained of color. Vera's lips parted. Marston blinked like he didn't understand English anymore. I stood, slowly pulled a crisp cashier's check from my tote, and set it in the center of the table. $1, I said. That's all I owe her now. Beside it, I placed the folder 3 inches thick, tabbed, documented, dated every dollar, every sacrifice, every lie. I looked at no one in particular. Keep it or burn it. Doesn't matter. Vera found her voice. Kaylin, let's not. But I was already walking out. I didn't slam the door. Didn't pause for effect. On the sidewalk, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. No applause, no dramatic music, no hug from a long-lost relative. Just air-peace and silence I finally owned. She thought it was over, but the bill for her lies was just coming due. The morning after the dinner, I woke not to silence, but to an online storm. I hadn't posted anything. I didn't need to. Valora had. Her feed was flooded with cryptic quotes. Sometimes blood doesn't mean loyalty. Betrayal always comes from the ones closest to you. The kind of curated mess she posted after blowing something up and playing victim. But this time it wasn't working. Comments shifted. One read, wait, I thought your sister was paying your rent. Another, didn't she cover your books and groceries too? Then someone posted a link to a public tweet. From Marion Funny, how the truth sounds like betrayal to a liar. The cracks were visible now, and they weren't mine. Around noon, I was cleaning the pantry when I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Vera and Marston, not Valora. I didn't open the door right away. I tied the trash bag, rinsed. My hands wiped them on a towel. Then I answered. Vera's eyes were already glassy. Marston's jaw was clenched, his voice sharper than I'd heard in years. You embarrassed her. You embarrassed us. I didn't flinch. No, I stopped covering for her. She embarrassed herself. Vera tried for something softer. You could have just talked to us. I did, I said, voice steady, many times. You just didn't hear me. They didn't stay long. No apology, no threats, just silence. When the door closed behind them, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a boundary. That weekend, I started packing. The new house was small, just over 900 square feet, near the coast, but it was mine. I hadn't told most of my family, just my boss at the garage and Marion. I boxed up clothes books, labeled cables and cords. I took my time. In the back of a drawer, I found a small velvet box. The sapphire necklace, the one I'd given Valora for graduation, the one she'd gifted to her boyfriend like it was nothing. I turned it over in my hand. The silver chain caught a slice of light through the window. It used to feel heavy with guilt and resentment. Today it just felt like mine again. I placed it in my jewelry drawer, not to wear, not yet, not as a trophy, just because I didn't have to give it away anymore. That evening, Jonah texted, heard what happened. Proud of you. I stared at the message before typing. Took me too long, but I got there. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. The next day, I met Marion for coffee. She slid into the booth, shoulders loose, phone in hand, ready for gossip. But this time she brought grace, not drama. You were always the strong one, she said over her mug. I smiled and for the first time didn't correct her. The last box I packed was labeled loose ends. It held old receipts, folded letters, pieces of who I was before I realized being quiet wasn't the same as being kind. A week later, I stood on the porch of my new place, barefoot, warm coffee in hand. The ocean air rolled in soft and slow. The necklace hung around my neck now. I didn't wear it for them. I wore it because it was mine again. I ran my fingers along the chain and whispered more to myself than anyone. This was the last thing I gave away without asking if I wanted it back. I didn't need closure. I had become it.